In example 3, we're going to use the power, product, and quotient rules with negative exponents. So if we take a look at letter A, the very first thing we want to do is get rid of any parentheses that we have. And to do that, we're going to look for these exponents on the outside and get those distributed. Thinking about letter A, remember that this 3 has a 1 as an exponent and U has a 1. So as we go through and multiply, we're going to get 3 to the negative 3, x to the negative 9, and u to the negative 3 on the top. So this again is coming from taking this negative 3 and multiplying it just to those top exponents. We also have to take the negative 3 and multiply it down here to the negative 1, giving us z to the third. Times, if I take a look at this set of parentheses here, there's no exponent on the outside to multiply through, so we can leave it the same. But notice we're dealing with a fraction here, so let's make this a fraction as well. This u to the negative 3 and z to the 6 is on the top in the numerator, and we can just put it over 1 so we know which one's on top and which one's on bottom. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and multiply across. So anytime we have two fractions, we're going to take the top or the numerator and multiply it with the numerator, combining any bases that we can. Here's my base of 3 to the negative 3, nothing else to combine it to, so I'm going to leave this 3 to the negative 3 here. I have an x to the negative 9, but again, just on the top, there's no other x's, so x to the negative 9 is going to stay. Then I have a u to the negative 3 and another u to the negative 3. I'm multiplying these two things together, which tells me I'll add those exponents, and I get a u to the negative 6. And then I have this z to the 6 on the top with no other z's to combine it with. Then in the denominator, all I have is a z to the third and a 1. So my denominator will just be z to the third. Once I have it as just one fraction, now I want to go ahead and make everything into positive exponents. So my next step here is to get it positive. So let's think about what we have to move and what stays the same. 3 to the negative 3, since this exponent is negative, this moves to the bottom. So 3 to the third comes down here. X to the negative 9, again a negative exponent, needs to move to the bottom, so x to the 9th will come down here. U to the negative 6, since this is a negative exponent, it moves to the bottom. Z to the 6th has a positive exponent, so that z to the 6th will stay on the top. And then my z to the third is still on the bottom. Then I need to look if there's anything else that I can simplify. Do I have any other bases that are the same? If I take a look in the numerator, I have a z to the 6th, and I also have a base of z in the denominator. Because I have both of these, I need to combine them into one. They're on different levels, one in the numerator, one in the denominator, which means I'm looking for my bigger exponent, which is the 6, telling me that my z's will stay on the top. And to figure out how many, I subtract 6 minus 3 to give me 3. Looking in my denominator, I have this 3 to the third, which is 27. I still have my x to the 9th, and I still have my u to the 6th. And that's our final answer. We're going to do one more of those if we take a look at letter B. This time again, we want to go through and get rid of the parentheses first. So this first set of parentheses has a negative 2 exponent that's going to get multiplied in. Let's not forget, again, that negative 3 has a 1 and that u also has a 1 as its exponent. So that's going to look like negative 3 to the negative 2, u to the negative 2. You know what, we're not going to have room up there. Let's move this below just to have a little bit more room. So same idea. Negative 3 to the negative 2, u to the negative 2, v to the negative 6, and w to the negative 4. And since we're going to be multiplying this by a fraction, let's keep this over 1. And then we're multiplying by, this other fraction does not have an exponent out here, so we don't need those parentheses. We can just rewrite it as v to the negative 1 over w to the second. Then what we want to do is create just one fraction. So we're going to multiply across the top and multiply across the bottom. So across the top, there's no other negative 3's to combine it with, so we're going to keep that as it is. And then let's not forget, this negative 3 is still in parentheses here. So we get negative 3 to the negative 2. Then we have u, and there's no other u's to combine that with, so u to the negative 2 will stay here. Taking a look at our v's, we have a v to the negative 6 and a v to the negative 1. Multiplying these tells us we'll add those exponents. So we get v to the negative 7. And then we have a w to the negative 4. Again, nothing to combine it with on this same level or the numerator. So w to the negative 4 also stays in the top. Taking a look at the bottom, we have a w to the second times 1. So we just are going to use that w to the second. Then we need to go ahead and get our exponents positive. So we have a negative 3 to the negative 2 that we need to bring to the bottom. So this will become a negative 3 to the second. We have our u to the negative 2, which is going to come to the bottom and make it u to the second. And our v to the negative 7th comes to the bottom to make it v to the 7th. And our w needs to come down here as well. Then if we take a look, we still have our w, oops, I'm going to move this over just a little bit. Our w to the second down here will stay, so we have a w to the second down on the bottom. Since there's nothing left on the top, we still have our 1 there. And then we're just going to go ahead and evaluate. So on the top, we still have our 1. On the bottom, negative 3 to the second is going to be positive 9. We have u to the second with no other u's to combine it with, so u to the second stays down here. V to the fourth, or I'm sorry, v to the 7th will also stay on the bottom. And then we have our w to the 4th and w to the 2nd. Since they're the same base, we're going to combine those together to give us w to the 6th. And that's our final answer. Next, I'd like you to do the try this. So there's one of those to try. Let me know if you have any questions. So pause it now, unpause it when you're ready to check your answer. If you did number 1 correctly, you should get 1 over 9 u to the 11th, x to the 6th times z.